how's it hanging? How's it happen? You guys know who this is. This is Kevin from the Chord Progression Podcast. The podcast, Rolling Stone Magazine says, initiates profound discussions with rock and metal artists, allowing fans to discover the creative workflow of their favorite musicians and understand the facts that make the band succeed or fall from fame. We are also sponsored by Dark Fusion Systems, the best for your custom computer needs. Get $100 off your entire bill. Code CVPod at darkfusionsystems.com. Link to the podcast below. Now let's go to feature presentation. We've had lots of bands on the podcast before. We've had Andrew Thorpe King, who has a record label, on the podcast before. We've had Theory Records on the podcast before, and now we're bringing on Peter James from Manic Kat Records. We talk about what it's like to run a label, the story behind Manic Kat, what they're looking for in artists, the importance they put on relationships and the human connection over just trying to make a buck, and why some of these independent labels, these smaller labels, might be the perfect way to go as times evolve in the 2020s. You guys ready for a great episode? Let's go! Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of the Chord Progression Podcast, we have interviewed so many bands from rock, metal, and all the different subgenres around there for over 5.5 years now. I mean, that is just an insane amount of time. And we've had only one other time where we've had someone that has had a record label connection join the podcast as well. Now we're coming on to number 2, celebrating their 10-year anniversary now in 2024. And with a whole 10-year festival to celebrate it, we are here with an independent punk label called Manic Kat Records. And yes, we have interviewed a couple of their bands before. Yes, we will bring more of them onto the podcast as well. But let's talk to the man who created this all. Please welcome Peter James from Manic Kat Records to the podcast. So Peter, welcome to the Chord Progression Podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me. That was a hell of an intro, man. I'll tell you. That was a huge buildup. I don't know if I can live up to it.
It's all a buildup that I just was like, okay, 3, 2, 1, whatever comes to mind, that's what I'm just going to put out there as the intro. I got a little sheet with notes. I'm just going to follow along with some of it, but boom, we're going to go for it. And then this is what we got.
That sounds good, man.
So I want to just jump into this whole entire thing right away because you've been around for 10 years, but I was trying to find out the history of Manic Kat throughout the day, see what I could pick up on, and there was not a lot around the history of Manic Kat that I could find. So I want to hear from your own perspective, your own words, like in a synopsis, what has been the history of Manic Kat Records? How did you start this? How did you get to where you are now? And why did you do this, man?
I get that a lot. So yeah, I mean, really just like the whole concept of the label started all the way back, believe it or not, in 2009. And I've been down the indie label route. I've been down the major label route. I've been in bands my entire life. Started playing, I've had fortunate enough to like be on Band's Warped Tour for a number of years from 05 to 09. So, Warped Tour family's been very, very good to me and my band and all that. So, it came down to, we were pitching our record the last of 2009 and got like crappy offer and like 360 deal and all this stuff. And we're like, you know what? We got enough contacts. We're just gonna put this thing out ourselves. So it really started out as a vanity label, to be honest with you. We're like, okay, we got Warped Tour in 2009, so let's drop the record. We'll go out on tour. We'll be a label, so to speak, too, and put a logo together, whatever. And it actually got some really good response. So at the end of Warped, we're like, okay, we kind of have something. Let's make this legit. Let's sign a few bands and see where this goes. You also have to remember back then I had a full-time band, full-time job, plus trying to get the label off the ground. And to be honest, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was still like a dumb kid. So what the hell did I know? I was not even 30 yet. I was 29 in 2009. You can do the math. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm in way over my head. So ended up like fast forward 8 months, 9 months, we ended up tabling it because it was me basically doing everything. So it just wasn't going to fly. And it wasn't until a buddy of mine in 2014, he's like, I think I want to do a label. And I'm like, well, I still have everything. Everything's still legit. Everything's trademarked, everything, whatever. Let's just bring it back and we'll do it the right way. And he's like, let's do it. He ended up fading out and I ended up taking the ball and running with it. Go figure. So, picked it up in 2014 and never looked back. I mean, I was fortunate enough. I left the corporate world a few years after that. I was doing both jobs for a bit, but I'm doing a label full time now. And I've been doing it now for probably about 8 years, 7 or 8 years. So, must be doing something right. So
you got to be doing something right. I feel a little bit of that like personal envy now, just because you're saying, you left the corporate world to be able to do this, where I'm doing this and I'm still kind of in there right now. I'm like, I would love to be able just to do this full time. Hey, still working at it, man. We're still working at it.
Man.
But what amazed me around the entire just history of that and just the beginning origin story is when you had the idea to start this all, you're already working a full-time job. You're already in another band at that point in time, and you're doing both of those to the full extent. Now you have to start a record label. You're going to try and do this, pick up on this. And I would have asked, did you have any time to sleep? But I know the answer is no, because I don't have any time to sleep either. So I feel you on that one. And doing it when you're saying, hey, I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going at this and trying it. There are so many people out there that are wanting to try things, that want to try something for themselves, want to try something new. And one of the biggest things that's holding them back is they don't feel comfortable diving in because they don't have that process understood yet. It's not out in front of you and it's not found yet. So you got to create on your own. You don't know what you're doing, and that unknown scares the living hell out of people. But if you can get past that unknown and that fear and be able to dive headfirst into it and just take whatever comes your way, take all the hits that come your way, take all the wins that come your way, you're going to get to a point where you're going to be where you are, Peter, where you're running a record label full time, not in the corporate world anymore, and doing something that you absolutely love. Like, I'm feeling energized just after that story right now.
Awesome. Good. It should. Because, there's a lot of positives, but I'm not trying to glamorize it. There's a lot of bad days too. I'm not going to lie to you, man. Like, it's like any job. You know what I mean? But I feel like, and you can kind of get this because, you do the podcast too. So it's like, you want to put that in. You want to put that extra hour in. You want to put that extra time because it's yours. You know what I mean? It's your baby. As opposed to like, working for the corporate machine where you're like, okay, whatever. My extra hour is of me doing overtime is going to be unappreciated. So who cares? That kind of deal. So.
Yeah, where you're doing the extra hour overtime for something that you care about, that you're passionate about, that you love. It's maybe, it's not going to bear the fruit right away that you want it to, but it's going to be something that at least you appreciate and that you can go for it. In the corporate world, yeah, you work an extra hour overtime. Yeah, it might reflect a little bit nicer on your paycheck every 2 weeks, but in the end, it's not going to be as big of a thing as you would like it to be. That's why I'm always big on, I understand why people want to go in the corporate world. I understand why people find it safe, secure, and they want to stay in that. If that's what your idea is and that's what you really want to go after, totally fine. Everyone has a different perception. But if you have that creative itch and you have that want to try something on your own, it's not going to satisfy it. And you got to try something. You got to go for it. And you got to let that fear of the unknown stay behind while you go forward and try something new.
Absolutely. You just got to do it. Honestly, what's the worst that could happen? Just got to do it.
Yeah. And now it's, we're looking at you 10 years later from that point in time with a roster of, I think it's something like 20, 25 bands that you have signed to Manic Kat at the moment. Mm-hmm. And you're doing something that people wish they were doing. So when it comes to all the bands you guys have on Manic Kat, how'd you guys find all these bands and work to get all these bands brought into to your record label overall? Because there's a lot of people out there that want to have that opportunity to have their creative art be seen by a label, shown to a label, and work with labels. So when it comes to how you guys do it with all these bands, how is that process done?
So it's a couple of different ways. We get a ton of demo submissions. You'd be surprised how many we get daily. We pride ourselves that we absolutely listen to every single demo. Good, bad, and different. And I've listened to some doozies, trust me, over the years. But some have really surprised me. So we've signed bands from demo submissions. We work with Reverb Nation. They've been phenomenal, which I think they're called Band Labs now. So it's like they've been rebranded. But and then A&R scours, like we're constantly surfing the web, looking at new up and coming talent. I don't care about like the next big TikTok sensation. That doesn't mean anything to me. It's really like longevity. It's really about development, and do they have something long term as opposed to like, all right, well, that's really cool that they had a viral video, but here today, gone tomorrow kind of concept. So I don't sign based on that.
So that makes a lot of sense, especially not only in today's day and age, but when you were starting as a band as well back in the MySpace days, where there were a lot of bands that got popular based off of MySpace, but it wasn't MySpace that made popular. They had the substance behind it. They had the drive, the ambition, and MySpace was such an impactful tool. But we see so many other people and so many other influencers, social media personalities, where they have the viral moment on TikTok or Vine or Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you want to say. And it's like there are the flash in the pan moment, but it's great to get that moment. But then once that moment is over, it's gone, and then you really didn't capitalize on it. It's like, it's 2024, you know, we heard about the Hawk Tua girl for all of June. And then after that, it was just like, that's it, because there is no more substance behind it. Same thing with the band. If you want to be able to capitalize out on those moments and get to that point in time, you got to make sure the substance is there. You just can't have that one viral moment and then have it be it.
Right. It's got to be sustainability, and it's a grind, you know, and in a lot of bands, that's why the cool thing is bands kind of separate themselves out, like on just naturally. Bands that grind, bands that tour, bands that are just doing it DIY style out on the road. Those are the ones that are catching attention. It's the bands that are like, oh, well, we don't need to tour. We just promote heavily on social media. That doesn't do anything. Like, I will never sign a band, and you'd be surprised how many meetings I've been on. And I'm like, okay, so what's your touring history look like? We don't tour. We just do the social media game. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. You're not for me. Because there's no sustainability there.
No, and even in today's day and age where social media is even more of a prominent thing than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago, whatever you want to say, there is still something to be said about the live show and how important that is, because that's for you to actually directly connect with your audience in person, face to face, and see how everything is going to have the actual real-time interaction and real-time response from there. Because if you're so focused in on social media, I've seen plenty of bands even interviewing them at this time. I'll take a look at, you know, your Spotify account. I'll take a look at, you know, how many followers you have, just because I'm curious about that. And you can always tell if there's someone that's really pushing one hard, because you can see a massive mismatch in it. But I've seen bands that have had, you know, 1, 2, 3 million monthly listeners struggle to pull 50 people into a room. But it's because you get the one song that has the viral moment. I've seen bands that have had, you know, 300, 400 monthly listeners on Spotify fill a whole room of like 250 people without problem. It's just like, now, why is that? Of course, promotion is a good thing, but if you don't have the actual substance that's there and you're depending upon social media, then you're not going to actually thrive in the real world, because social media is just out there.
Right, exactly. It's intangible. The thing is, I tell my bands, it's like, you know, you're connecting with people, right? So yeah, we use social media as a connection, but there's still a disconnect. Nothing beats the face-to-face. Nothing beats like, hey, I just hung out with 5 fans and had a beer with them, and then they bought a ton of merch. Guess what? You made a fan for life. Because now they'll go out and tell their friends, they're like, hey, XYZ band was really, really cool. I hung out, I had a beer with the singer, or I had a beer with the drummer, or whatever. So cool. We got to support them. And then next time they're around, they bring all of their friends. It's really not that difficult.
It really isn't. And I've seen a lot of bands, especially, you know, the ones I've interviewed, I've gone to see them play live. There's been one band that I went to go see him play live, told a couple of people to go see him because they were opening for Fit for a King on this tour. And it was like, awesome. Oh, we're not really sure. But I'm like, just go, trust me. I'm thinking like, I just hope this band actually performs one hell of a live show. Right. We got there, band starts, pit opens up. It's me and 2 other people. And we're like, well, we hope this gets better. By the end of the show, there was a whole entire wall of death that the entire crowd was involved in. It's like, now that is what I'm talking about. And I've seen this band continue to grow and grow. And it's such a beautiful thing. And again, I've seen them play the social media game really well, but it's always, there's going to be something there. You've got to have that quality there beyond what's on social media. You got to have the quality in the real world. And I love that you look at that too, because as time continues to go on, social media is just going to become a bigger and bigger thing. But it's going to create an even starker divide between the real world and what social media is as that gets more prominent and as more people put so much more focus into that.
Right, definitely. And, you know, obviously I'm not trying to discourage social media. That's important. You know, you got to play the social media game, like you said, but you got to be able to do both. You got to be touring. You got to be there making those actual connections with fans, because that's what's going to build, you know, and that builds off of, and then it expands with your social media following.
So just beyond other like bands that you have been trying to get signed by you guys, focusing so heavily on social media, the bands that you have signed to the label right now, and the bands that you're working with, what other challenges in social media have you guys been working through in order to make sure that you are in the best position possible? Just because it is such an interesting way of the world compared to what it was even 5 years ago before the pandemic hit.
Well, definitely. I mean, you know, you kind of have to follow trends in terms of like, okay, where is everybody gravitating towards? Like, and then, you know, we look at obviously metric and stuff where, you know, all right, where's the band headed? Where do they want to go? Are they looking for a younger fan base? Are they good with an older demographic? And that's really where it becomes tailored. It's not like a cookie cutter thing where like, okay, well, this is the answer for everybody. This is what we're going to do for everybody. No, It's not the case. Got to look at every single band, what their goals are, what they're looking to achieve, and where they're headed. And then we put a strategy together that kind of brings that to fruition. So, yeah. Is TikTok a huge part of it? Sure. If you're looking to reach a new audience and a younger demographic, absolutely. But if the music doesn't lend itself to that, then that's not, in the marketing plan. So.
Yeah, and I like that idea too, especially from what I've experienced at even trying to do the podcast game is you got to take a look at the metrics. You got to take a look at the numbers, and you got to see where you're tracking, where you're trending, and how things are going. You got to take a look at how everything else is going out in the marketplace in terms of social media, and how can you leverage that for the best of your ability. Now, again, we're not saying, focus fully in on social media. I think we already hammered that point home, but it's how can you use that as a tool to help grow the band in that capacity. So you got to take a look at the numbers. You got to take a look at what's working. You got to take a look and understand where you want the band to go, because say your numbers are tracking towards an older demographic, but your sound and your style should be focusing on the younger demographic. Okay, so what? Then you have a decision to make. One, do you want to try and go to that younger demographic? So you're going to have to change things and how you're presenting yourself, how social media presenting, how the content you're making. Or do you want to just change what you thought you wanted and go to the older demographic and really focus in on what you're doing right now? Like, you can make both plays. You can make either or with the proper information, but you got to have that information, and then you got to make the call on what you think is going to be best for the band overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look at data and we look at analytics and all that stuff. And the band is involved. So it's like those days of like the label dictating, that may or may not still be the case. In terms of what we do, we're a team, like that's like our biggest challenge when we're signing a band, trying to convince them of that old stigma where it's like, okay, it's not an us versus them kind of scenario. It's not like, okay, the big bad record label, and we're going to dictate X, Y, and Z, and you're just going to do it. It is very much a team kind of scenario where, we strategize. Because bands know what they need. Some of them know exactly what they need. Some of them know better than we do, so we kind of build strategies and game plans together.
Yeah, and you need that strategy. You need that as well. And as time goes on, just those different strategies are going to end up being shown to you. They're going to end up looking and seeing where you can drive further with that as social media evolves. Because right now, TikTok's a huge thing. Who knows? 2-3 years down the line, TikTok could be non-existent anymore. There's always change in the marketplace, so you have to be aware of that. And that's where, bands come in, and sometimes they have that forethought and wherewithal to, focus in on a different social media platform, and you listening to them absolutely makes sense. But the fact that you're willing to work with them and not be seen as the big bad record label as it's our way or the highway, because we've heard so many stories, not only from the past, and I'm talking about, before probably the new millennium, but since then we heard we know a day to remember with the Victory Records saga. We know all about that stuff. There's so many stories about record labels trying to just force their idea and force their wants and will onto bands so that they follow along and they make what they think is going to be the most amount of money that might take away from the band's authenticity and actual long-term longevity. That can be seen as a problem. That can be seen as something that is going to scare other artists and other band members away from signing with a record label. So when it comes to you guys really being able to create that team mentality and create that team focus, how do you do that with the band, and how do you present that to bands that maybe you want to sign so that they're more comfortable with what you guys are after, what they're after, and how those missions line up together?
So we do things, and apparently, we do them quite differently from what I've been told from a lot of other labels, which to me is a good thing. For me, it's all about relationship building. At the end of the day, if I can have a beer with you, hang out with you, then I can have a long-term relationship, because, an agreement and a contract is a long-term relationship. It's basically like a marriage. You're tied to this individual artist or this band or whatever for X amount of years or X amount of releases or whatever. You got to be able to get along, and not even a matter of getting along. It's getting along, when things go sideways. And I always bring that up in every meeting. I'm like, because everybody's best friends when things are going to plan. Newsflash, this is the music industry. Nothing ever goes to plan. Ever. At least on the indie label side, I can speak from experience. I don't know the majors because they pay so much money. I get it. They dictate stuff. But in terms of the indie side, nothing ever goes to plan. So it's when things go sideways, how can you guys work together with the artists and the label team and not kill each other and not point fingers and everything? It's like, okay, guys, that didn't work out exactly how we planned. How do we pivot from here? What do we do? and being transparent too, because, to try and, cover it up or like, oh, okay, maybe the band won't know. No, I'm always super transparent with stuff like that. Like if something goes sideways, we talk about it like, okay, how do we pivot? What do we do? How can we, make this work? And that's really what it is. And it's about, again, relationship. It's trust and building relationship.
See, now that is something that I'm absolutely incredibly happy to hear, because we hear so many stories. I mean, I'll use the corporate world as an example. You can use the music industry here too, but for everybody else, the corporate world seems like, something that's a little more common, a little more heard. We hear so many stories about people just being treated as numbers on a spreadsheet or as cogs in the system. So when managers or people that you're working with or people that you're business partners with, they're willing to throw you under the bus in a business deal because they don't see the people involved. They just see the dollars at the end of it. They just see the entity. They don't see the fact that when it comes to a business deal that's made up of humans making a deal, it's not people making a deal. It's not just one, name brand, another name brand making. It's not like that. So when it comes to the music side of things, if you're going to have that idea of, we're focusing on the people that we're working with, we want them to grow. We want them to become better. We want them to do the best that they can do with their music, with their art, with their passion, so that when things go good, we can be there to celebrate with them. But when things go sideways, inevitably they will, because this is life. Yep. We're humans. We're not perfect. So inevitably these things will go sideways. It's not about pointing fingers. It's not about yelling about who's making what kind of money. It's all about, okay, this happened. This went sideways. How can we correct it? How can we go in a different direction? What can we do from here? Well, how can we grow from this? How can we grow from this as people? Because you're not just throwing them to the side and just being like, okay, you guys figure it out and leading from the back. No, you guys are not only leading from the front, but you're walking with these bands at the same time too, through some of these challenges. And that's going to be something that not only brings a lot more comfortability to a band, but also proves exactly that you guys are who you are as Manic Kat Records. And you want to help out these musicians more than anything. You don't want to just, I'm just here to make money off them. No, I'm actually here to help the sound grow.
Yep. Absolutely. Because I mean, I've been in those situations. I've been in rooms where, been offered a 360 deal and, I had to walk away from it because it just doesn't make sense, and this was back in, the early 2009. So, early 2010s, and they were coming out full throttle with 360. That's all they were offering back then. And, you can't survive because if a record tanks, you're on the hook. You're in a lot of trouble. So, and it can happen. So, for me, I wasn't trying to perpetuate the same thing over and over again. I didn't want to just be another label. I want to do things differently. So.
Yeah. And those 360 deals. Once I first found out about them and started doing research on them, I thought, why would anybody in the world think this is a good idea to sign? But when you're a young band, you're a young artist, and you finally feel like you're going to be signed by a label, and you think this is a great thing just because you're going to be a signed band, sometimes you just go with it. You just let your inhibition go to the wind. You're like, this is our chance. But you could get massively screwed over financially on that. So it's always important as a band, no matter what record label you're working with, always read the contract and understand what you're signing.
Yep. And take it to a lawyer. I always tell every band that I ever talk to, I'm like, look, we'll go over it, make sure you full understand it, but take it to a lawyer. There's no fine print that I'm worried about being discovered. I don't care. Our deals are very, very straightforward. I want you to take it to a lawyer. That's for me. I want there to be no issues or questions.
See, that's even better too, just because, again, you're not only showing these other bands, these artists, it's like, hey, I know we're walking through this contract with you. You know what's there, but we want to make sure that you know exactly what's there and that it's comfortable. So take it to a lawyer who actually understands all this stuff. See if there's anything in there that you guys disagree with, or that the lawyer comes up as like, hey, this might not be something that you guys want to be a part of. And it just establishes trust with the label as well, because if they sign it, great. If they find something with it where they're just not comfortable and they don't sign it, now they have the utmost respect for you because you told them, hey, still go get all this stuff checked out. Understand this before you actually sign it, because we don't want to screw you over.
Right. That's exactly right. And I want this to be, everybody's kind of coming into this knowing what their responsibilities are. I come to the table with A, B, and C, you come to the table with X, Y, and Z, and that's it. And, you know ahead of time what's expected of each party. So
absolutely. One thing I've been seeing a little bit more recently since I really got into all this with the podcast, and especially since the pandemic too, is when it comes to the major label side, we're seeing a lot more bands get away from that and drop off of that. They're going towards smaller labels or they're going independent just because of the chance that is there, the different types of contracts, different types of monetary, investments and involvements that these other record labels have. So over the past couple of years have you been seeing a lot of this shift, and how have you been dealing with it?
So we've been seeing quite a bit of a shift like that. And for us, it's a great thing because we're realizing like the way our model works, it's very different than, the big indies and stuff. So, and we know in particular, our deal specifically tailors to more of a legacy act. So like the bands have been there, they've done that, they've signed to major labels, they've signed to big indies, they're done with their deal. They're like, okay, I don't want to do that again. I've done it. And when we present our deal offer, they're like, okay, we're in. Like, let's do this. Perfect example, there's a huge band that we just signed and we're going to be announcing end of September. And I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to shock a lot of people. So I'm stoked for it.
Well, I would love to ask what that band is, but I know you're not going to tell me.
I'm not saying anything, right? You're not going to get an exclusive on your podcast, man. That's not happening.
Dang, I usually get one random exclusive a year, and I haven't gotten it yet in 2024, so I was hoping that was going to be the moment.
Definitely not. Because you know what? Not only would I leak a huge thing, but the band themselves will be kind of annoyed too, because we're going to be doing a huge build that we're working towards right now. So I'm excited for it. So.
And you don't want to ruin that huge build.
Yeah.
You don't want to ruin the momentum for something like that. And especially when it comes to the record label overall, if it's going to be something that's really big, you want to make sure that it's a grand presentation. It's done the right way. You don't want to just drop the name on a podcast,
right?
Even though I would love you to because it's mine. If it was someone else's, I'd be
viral,
like,
my friend, you would probably go viral pretty quickly, at least this episode. So sorry.
Well, to be fair though, the last time a band dropped a thing like that on the podcast, it was the best received episode I've ever had that was recorded. Then I did a live episode with them 2.5 months later, and that one went even better. So
wow. Cool.
Yeah, so if you were to drop it, I'd be like, okay, we're doing a live one right after that.
I'll think about it.
Alrighty then. But again, that's still insanely exciting too. Now I'm even more excited and anticipated to hear what you guys are going to have with this band, what you're going to do with it. But I love the fact that, you understand what other bands have gone through, what other labels have done to some of these bands in terms of some of these contracts. Of course, the 360 deal, especially in the music industry, everyone knows it's infamy. But you're able to look at certain acts, look at certain bands, figure out what's going to be best for you guys, what acts you want to go for, and then present them with the best deal, especially for the legacy acts, the ones that have been there, done that. They're already seeing, hey, we can continue doing this exactly the way we wanted to, and we actually have a deal that is going to be a lot better for us than what maybe some of these bigger labels were offering. Maybe it was more money in that end, but just the overall percentage cut or the overall obligations you had to do just wouldn't be worth it.
Right. And everybody signs for their own different reasons. But, at the end of the day, I always go into it, it's like, okay, it's got to make sense for everybody. It's really what it comes down to. So,
yeah. And if it doesn't make sense for everybody, then what's the point?
Right. So, and it comes down to relationships, man. You're building relationships with people. And I only work with people I like. And, I love every single one of our bands. And I'm close with every single one of my bands. I bet you a lot of labels can't say the same thing, but for me, relationship is everything. So I am super close with everybody.
Man, that is insanely cool. Now I'm thinking I got to get more guys from labels on here and actually talk, man, because I'm having a lot of fun with this. Cool. Not only just hearing about just you guys and what you're doing and what your overall mission is and how you work with these bands, but just also learning how the overall label side somewhat works and just what is being looked at in certain bands, how these contracts are being presented, and just when it comes to having that relationship mentality and putting people first, how important that is in today's world where we're so used to being, jaded and shafted and shifted by some of these companies, whether it's we've seen from other record labels, if you're a musician, or from other, corporate entities or other, companies that you're just working with. You've seen it all over the place. So when you find a label, especially a musician, that's so heavily involved in working with you guys, why wouldn't you go for it? I mean, it seems like a pretty good idea.
You know what? It doesn't always work out. Kev, so for me, sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't fit, square peg, round hole, and that's cool, and that's fine. I would rather know up front because then, we're saving each other a world of headache because, sometimes it's oil and water. It just doesn't mix. And that's cool. That's fine. And, they might be looking for something that we don't offer or can't offer. And again, that's fine. But the way we go through our process, we find out real quick if it's going to make sense or not. Because, again, like I told you, it's a long-term commitment. It's a long-term relationship, a deal. So we want to make sure it makes sense.
That's just doing due diligence right there, man. That not only protects you, but it protects the bands as well from potentially preventing them from entering something that might not be very fruitful or might not be very good for them.
Right.
You're putting the effort in, not only for yourself, but for them as well. And maintaining this overall mindset of people first, relationships first, and making sure that the music is what comes first overall. Because when it comes to music, especially these artists, they're putting their heart and soul into this. This is a piece of them. And the last thing you want to do is stifle someone's creativity.
Yeah, definitely not. No, at the end of the day, we're here to help. We're here to grow on it. Because, you also have to remember, and I tell these bands this, if I wanted a band to sound a certain way, I would find that band. I wouldn't try to convert you into whatever I'm looking for. I'll just go look for, find what I'm looking for then, So it's all about the music, music first, and then, everything else falls into place.
And especially with the availability of music now, discovery, especially with streaming, this should be pretty easy to find a band, even if they're rather small, if they sound like a certain band. I mean, you might have to do a little bit of digging because if you look up trying to find a band that sounds like Alice in Chains and you type in Alice in Chains, you're going to get for fans of her, you might also and you're going to see a bunch of large bands that you already know. It's you might have to do a little bit of digging, but you'll eventually find it.
Yeah, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of grind, but, it's worthwhile. I feel like we have a really solid roster and, it's taken a while to build, but I think we're in a really good spot right now.
Well, from building this roster, I got to ask, do you have any wild, wacky, crazy stories from your time with this label that you'd be willing to share as a way of being you know what? I still can't believe this happened, but just be something fun to share. I love wacky story time, man.
It's one that's relatively recent. I don't know if he's going to be okay with me telling him. Do I have to divulge the band?
No, you don't have to.
Okay. Because that might be weird. So I was doing merch for an act probably about 6 months ago or whatever, maybe a little longer at this point. And it's on the bigger side. They're doing an act and they're playing with Wheatus, as a matter of fact, in Philly. And he's with his bandmates and whatever. Promoter comes down, talks to them, settles up for the night, whatever. Leaves the phone on the table accidentally. They don't realize whose phone this is. So they're asking around on the merch table, whose phone is this? Whose phone is this? All of a sudden, they pick it up. It's unlocked. So they start flipping through the phone, start going through it, start taking pics, start doing stuff. I'm like, oh my God, is there going to be a dick pic in here? Please do not do something like this. So, they're doing dumb stuff. They're doing dumb videos and everything. All of a sudden they go through and they, go to Spotify, start following the artist, start doing, Apple Music, following their band or whatever. And, about 15 minutes later, a promoter comes down. She's like, oh, did I forget my phone here? And I'm like, oh my God. So the act that he just puts his head on my shoulder and I whisper in his ear, I was like, this is why you don't do dumb shit. So, gets the phone back. They scurry away children that just got in trouble. And she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, yes, they found your phone. And she's like, oh no, what did they do? I'm like, I think they just added themselves to your Spotify or whatever. It's like, yeah, I see that. They didn't go into my Tinder account, did they? I'm like, I really hope not. I have no idea. This is getting awkward in a hurry. I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think we're good. It's a great meeting. Just like tried to scurry off myself. I'm like, oh my God. It was just, yeah. And it's an older, more seasoned band. So I'm just like, really, guys, like, what the hell is wrong with you? So you'd expect that from a baby band, like 22, 23-year-old kids that are on tour, not knowing what the hell they're doing. But I guess, things don't change.
Sometimes things don't change. Sometimes that little kid just comes out and you just have a blast with it. Honestly, I mean, if I saw someone's phone at the merch table, like, whose is this? Especially, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure they're going to find it at the end of the night, especially if you're at a smaller venue, turn it back, or even any venue, you turn it into the bar, they'll put in lost found, someone will end up finding it. But you always take the random pictures in there just for fun. Don't take anything risque or anything that's going to, go on the internet and end up having you, have a problem, maybe get you canceled. You don't want that.
No, definitely not.
Also, don't go in anybody's Tinder account or any dating apps or social media. Just, have fun, band, take some fun pictures. Leave it at that.
Yeah. So I think it was fine, but it was just one of those moments where I'm like, really? I have to babysit you? Come on, man. What is going on?
It's like, but we were just trying to have fun, Peter. Jeez,
oh, I know. That's basically what I got. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I got like, would you tour manage? I was like, absolutely not. There's no way. Sorry, I'm out. So.
At that point in time, you might just have to get like your own like burner phone and just put a new case on it every single day, leave it at the merch table so that they're constantly doing that and just create fake everything on there. And then every day you just go to Apple Music, Spotify, and unfollow the band. So then when they see it again, it's just now they just keep going back over and over and over and over again. That might take a lot of work, but it kind of would be funny if all of a sudden, I played a prank on you. What is it? Remember the phone that kept getting left at the merch table every night? Was the same phone over and over and over again.
That is a lot of work, though. I don't know if I have the attention span or the time in the day to do something like that, to be honest with you, but it'd be really funny.
Hey, somebody might, or just every single day, tour managing, out on the road with them, take one thing out of someone's bag, just put it somewhere else, and they're looking for it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't know where it went. It was the Magic Tour Fairy.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I have a little bit of OCD. I probably would lose my mind if someone did that to me, so I don't know if I could do that to somebody. Yeah, that's a great way of getting under my skin in a hurry, especially on tour. So.
Okay, so any band that might go out with Peter just for some random reason, don't do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, believe me. I might be actually doing a run myself. It's been a while since I've toured, but I might be doing a run in November, potentially. It's still TBD right now, but it could be cool. We'll see.
Oh, and I was going to ask you so where are you going to be going? What's happening? But if it's TBD, then, you really can't say anything about it.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure it out. We're still trying to plan everything, but we're looking to do an East Coast run, so it could be kind of fun.
East Coast run? Dang it. Why is it always the East Coast?
We're doing the West Coast, too. My guitar player lives out in the West Coast, so we'll do a West Coast run as well.
Not the West Coast either. Come on, do the Midwest.
No one goes to the Midwest. Come on, man.
No one goes to the Midwest. You don't want to go to Chicago?
I gotta go see Chicago because I got my boys in show off there. So
come where most of the guys in show off live. Come up by me. Come to Milwaukee. We're here. We'll hang out. We'll have a good time.
Cool. Sounds good. We'll have
I might leave my phone at the merch table, though, to see what you guys do with it, but we'll see.
I will do absolutely nothing with it. So you don't have to worry about that.
The other guys, though, that's what I have to worry about, right?
Different story. All bets are off because they do a lot of dumb stuff. So
you're going to be okay, we're not going to do anything with it. Next thing I know, I'll open up. I'll have 20 different pictures on there. I'm going to like a bunch of different random bands and be signed up for eHarmony.
Probably. Either that or there might be something inappropriate. Depends on the band member. Might be something inappropriate.
If it's something inappropriate, I'll probably look at it and be like, that's funny.
This is going online.
Oh no, what this is going online and be like, I'm just showing this to Peter and being like, this, like I left my phone on the merch table. This is what one of your fellow band members put on there.
I'd probably just laugh and be like, yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I'd be like, yep, I'm just gonna, just put that somewhere else. Put it online? Hell no, that's funny as hell.
Yeah. Jeez. Oh my
well,
God.
with the 10-year anniversary, you say you got a 10-year festival coming up. So what's going on with that, man?
It's crazy hectic. I'll be honest with you. Anytime you're planning any kind of big event, it's always hectic. There's always a lot of moving parts. But we're under 10 days out, and I'm excited for it. It's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of bands are coming in for it, and it's just going to be a good time, man. It's going to be a good celebration. 10-year culmination of a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and 2 nights of just kind of hanging out with the bands, having the bands like interact and be able to kind of like throw down a bit, and good chance for them to intermingle, maybe do some show trades, some tour trades, because that's what it's all about. Like, we have all these bands on our roster, and some of them don't even know each other. They know them by name, and that's it. So it'd be cool for them to all play, and then like, oh wow, you're better than I thought you were going to be, or whatever. Your sound's a little bit harder than the record, or whatever. Let's tour together. Let's do this together. So that's kind of what I hope for. From all that, it's all just about, networking and having all the bands kind of come together and just kind of, have it naturally build on its own,
Yeah, and you're absolutely fostering a environment that's going to have that collaboration, that's going to have that get-together style, that's going to have this, hey, we're going to get to know each other. We're going to be able to build up on that relationship aspect that you're talking about. You're putting that relationship forefront message out there already for these bands. Like, we're getting you guys all together. You're probably going to meet some people that you don't know. You're going to meet some people, again, that you do know. But you're going to get a chance to see a bunch of different bands. You're going to get a chance to experience what they got going on, see the bands that you like, discover a brand new one you might like, and you never know what's going to happen after that. Could go on tour, could end up getting together, trade different ideas on certain musical ideas, certain, promotion ideas. You never know what might happen, but you're not going to get that unless you get everybody together.
Right.
And what better way to do that than a 10-year celebration where just don't leave your phone at the merch table, anybody. Just don't do that.
I think they all know better. Trust me. They don't do that.
I'm not talking about the bands. I'm talking about everybody that also shows up too.
You're in trouble. Yeah, do not do that. That's not a good idea.
Make sure you wear pants that have zipper pockets. Very, very good idea.
Fair enough. I mean, and we're doing it at a really cool venue. We're doing a venue that like is pretty near and dear to me. Grew up in the New York scene. Like, I actually grew up in Jersey and always playing in the New York scene. So we're doing a venue where, for me, grew up playing in that show, playing in that venue for years and years and years. And it's actually a venue that had some pretty big bands come through and develop from there. So like, I did a show, my old band, way back in the day. It was my old band, a small little band called Shibuti, and a random band called Interference. So the importance of that is, my band did, a few years on Warped Tour, which we're excited about, all that. Shibuti ended up becoming Coheed, so that was awesome. And a little band called Interference, the lead singer, his name was Jason DeSucio, who now is a huge producer and is one of the main producers for the Chainsmokers. So, yeah, kind of crazy.
That is absolutely insane. And again, you never know what's going to happen when you get bands together. You never know where these guys are going to go, where these girls are going to go. You never know, because there are plenty of stories out there where you could probably hear from these bands. I was in this band before. I was in this band before growing up. Played with this band, and then shit just happens and it takes off. I mean, I've asked artists about these certain times. It's like, hey, have you ever had a moment, either at a show or something that just inspired you? And hearing like, yeah, I ran into this person at this show and it's a huge artist and they gave me the time of day. Or I ran this person, I just got to talk to them and seeing where they went from there. Either they joined a new band, who knows what it is. It's something that's such a cool piece of just music history that in a weird way, it's like if you were there, it just feels like you're a part of it. And you get this just positive rush from it, especially if you really like the music. So best way to get, more people to do that, get people together. Never know what might happen.
Exactly. So we're looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. I wish you were closer. I would have you come out.
Unfortunately, I'm kind of stuck here in the Midwest. Plus, when you're saying that, it's like 10 days from when we're recording this. Yeah, one of my good friends is getting married around that time. So I'm pretty sure I would be getting yelled at if I did not go to that wedding. But
oh yeah, you'd be dead.
It's tough when it's like other obligations, music. It's like that meme where it's like, the one guy's trying to grab that big giant ball and it's just like something's pulling it back. I'm like, music, other obligations.
Exactly. No, I hear you, man. I get it. It's called the real life, and it sucks sometimes. It is what it is.
I've said this plenty of times where unfortunately I can't be 2 places, 3 places, 4 places at once because sometimes there's like 4 different shows going on in one night. I'm like, I wanted to go to all of these, but I can't.
I'm in the same boat because you got to realize how many bands are always like, hey, you just come out and see me, come out and do this, come out and do that. I'm like, I'd love to, but then I can't split myself in like 4 equal pieces. So
yeah,
it's not going to happen. Sorry, guys.
It is what it is. Now, we're still in 2024. We got a huge year of 2025 coming up. I know you've got a huge announcement to be making by the end of September, which we are not going to be leaking on this podcast because Manic Kat's going to make a huge announcement about it, and we want to let them do that. But beyond that, what you got planned for the rest of the year? What you got planned for 2025 going forward with Manic Kat Records?
So I can tell you, because we've been teeing this up. Ryan is actually celebrating the 20th anniversary of Take It All Away this year. And doing so, he's going to be doing a few special songs that are near and dear to him, and he's going to be re-recording them. So we're doing a special release with that. More to come in the next couple of weeks. You know, we're going to be having more announcements and more details and stuff, but Ryan's pretty excited about it, and we're just honored that, you know, we're able to do it and do it together. So I'm excited for it. And there's an interesting collab that's coming out of this as well too, and something that's not typically Ryan Cabrera. That's all I'll say with this particular collab. It will definitely raise some eyebrows, which I'm pretty psyched about.
It's like Ryan Cabrera collabing with the guy that sang Mambo number 5. Here we
Definitely
go.
Not. You should go in the other direction. Definitely not. Something way more different. So, but it's going to be
collaborating with Carrie King.
You'll just have to wait and see. It's going to be fun.
Just have to wait and see about nice Ryan Cabrera collab, nice re-recording of some songs, and a brand new band announcement that is apparently absolutely huge.
It's huge. And then a couple of other big surprises for 2025. So we've got a stacked year ahead of us, which I'm pretty excited about.
I feel like every time you're going to post about something, it's going to be like, surprise!
Kinda. That's kind of what I feel like. Right after the new year, I think we're just going to start bombarding people in a really cool way. So.
Well, then, every listener to the Chord Progression Podcast, get ready because I'm almost certain I'm going to be getting a lot of emails like, hey, you want to interview this band? You want to interview this band? You want to see what's going on here? And be like, sucks I can't be in 2 places at once, but yes.
I'll make it work. Fine.
Somehow I'll make it work.
And that's why we love you, Kevin.
Oh, thanks, Peter. And before we wrap this up, I'm going to ask you one more question. This is going to be interesting because it might be tough for you to answer this one. I've been asking this to every person in the podcast for over a year now. Helps us get to know more new music and get to know the music that you love. So I have to limit it to just 3.
Okay.
But can you name me 3 bands or artists that you love that you would love to see more people get into right now?
Do they have to be on my roster or not from the roster?
They do not have to be on your roster. If you want to name ones on your roster, go for it. If you have ones that are not on your roster, feel free to say whoever you feel like.
So smaller bands. I want to focus on smaller bands because everybody knows the big guys. Okay. I would absolutely. There's an older band that was on our roster at one point, and I'm still very, very close to them. Go check out Noise Brigade. They helped shape like the way we did business back in the day, and just good people. Still just genuinely amazing human beings, but their music has always been phenomenal. They're originally from Alaska, and they live now in Portland, Oregon. So definitely go check those guys out. They're still making music. It's not as aggressive as they were. They're not touring nearly as aggressive as they used to. Kind of slowing things down a little bit, but they still sound phenomenal. So absolutely check those guys out. Another one would definitely have to be, again, shameless plug, but Todd Morse from The Offspring. His solo stuff, totally different than what I was expecting. Totally just such happy, good music. Mm-hmm. Like, so if you want to just be upbeat and just have a good time, and it just overall just solid music. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like a band that's coming up that and again, these 3 actually ended up being bands that are signed to us, but the Lucky. They have surprised me in such a great way where their music is just, everything is slightly a little different. It's all under one umbrella and one genre, but everything has its own place. And like the new single we're getting ready to drop for them, I think it just drops on the 20th of September. It's called Wait It Out. And it's just such a great coming of age story where it just, you can't help but put yourself in their shoes because you've been there. Whether you're as a musician or even in a corporate world or at your shitty day job or whatever you got going on, it's like a very much a coming of age thing where it's like, okay, we were here and now we're finally getting to where we were trying to get to. And it's a pretty awesome feeling. So, it's some really cool music that we're going to be putting out. And I just love being a part of like these artist journeys where it just, because I connect with all of that stuff. I can connect with all the music. And I want everybody to listen to it and be able to connect to it as well.
Thank you. I could have said it better myself, man. I also want to throw out, plug Show Off and also Along Came a Spider, because Show Off, their episode with us will come out right before this one. But Along Came a Spider was back on the podcast in like 2020, 2021. So it's been a while. When I saw him on the roster, I was like, ooh, there's another one I've had on even before this. So bring them on again, though. They were fun as hell.
They're good dudes, too. I'd love to throw Ryan on. I think you'd have a blast with Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
He's a funny guy, so I think you'll have a really good time. Yeah, maybe even Todd, too, because he's got stories for you. If you want some crazy stories, go to his TikTok. Because he's like, oh, I ever tell you a story about X, Y, and Z? I'm like, yeah. And you told all of TikTok that story too. So, yeah.
If we get Todd on, I'm going to have to like revamp this, make it look like I'm sitting by a fireplace and be like, this is a special episode, story time with Todd. And like open a book and like just have him like read like a crazy ass story and be like, that wasn't in the book, Todd. Jeez.
How long do you got? Crazy stories are pretty much like, because you got to remember, he was in H2O too. So
honestly, I could listen to him for a couple hours and just break him up into like, okay, here's this podcast episode with these two stories. Now here's another one with these two stories. Another one with just one story where he went for a whole hour.
He could easily. So if you want story time with Todd, we can make that happen. I will make sure we get that hooked up for you, Kev.
Oh, I will absolutely take story time with Todd. That makes me even more excited. And Peter, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. Hey, this was absolutely incredible. I'm energized as all hell. I can't believe we did this. This was just the thing I was looking forward to most of the day, even though, we did this in the afternoon. But yeah, most of the day I was looking forward to this. And now the rest of the day is going to go like this because this is over.
Come on, man.
Don't be sad it's over. Just be happy it happened.
I really appreciate you having me, man. I had a blast. Some of the questions were awesome. They're not the traditional ones, so I really appreciate it. It was really cool.
Oh, you're very welcome. But I'm going to end this with three things. First things first, when it comes to finding Manic Kat Records online, find out all the bands they have and that super duper awesome announcement that's coming at the end of September. Go to the script for the podcast where it says find Manic Kat online. Links and labels for everything are going to be down there so you can follow along with them, know what's happening, find their bands, find where they're playing live, get all the music, all that good stuff. So I'm doing all the hard work. All you have to do is click and go to the link and you're there. Ooh, yeah. Now, step number 2. So, Peter, whenever we're guesting the podcast, during the podcast, I tend to make a certain promise. And this is a hell of a lot of fun, so I got to make this promise to you. So it is not usually for a band, it's when I get to see them perform live for the first time. But it's just going to be when I meet you for the first time. I don't know when that's going to be, but it's maybe at a show. Maybe you're playing live. Maybe it's just one of the random bands that's playing and you get to be there and I just show up. Or I just come out to New York and be like, hey, how's it going? But when that happens, I will find you. I will come and say hi. But the real promise is first round's on me.
I'll hold you to it.
Please do, because I like to make good on that promise, even though my bank account's like, Kevin, stop making that promise. Please. Really, please.
So how many have you fulfilled so far?
About, that I've been able to, probably about 20 or 30.
Oh my God. Yeah, your bank account does not love you right now.
Yeah, and there's some that I'm like doubled up on. There was one where it was there was like their band's first time over in the US, so I was like, hey, I'll bring you a whole case of beer on the bus. So I brought a whole case of beer on the bus. I knocked on the door. The band wasn't on the bus. It was a different band.
Oh no.
So
were they appreciative?
Oh, they were appreciative because I was like, yeah, you guys can have some of this too. I don't think they're going to say no to you guys drinking it. So I got to talk with them and I brought their lead singer on the podcast the next year. It was a beautiful
thing. There you go. Very cool.
And now step number 3, Peter. As we bring this to a conclusion, I can end this by saying goodbye because this was a hell of a lot of fun. I will continue to support Manic Kat Records, all the bands you have, and I would love to do this again in the future, man. This was great. So this cannot be goodbye. This has to be, I'll see you later.
I'll see you later, man. Thank you.
Well, folks, that's my interview with Peter from Manic Kat Records. And now it is time for Kevin's final thoughts. So I love talking with these record label guys. I'm not going to lie. I talked with Andrew Thorpe King in 2022. We talked with Cody Frayne of Theory Records earlier this year. And now we talk with Peter from Manic Kat. What I love about these episodes is we always talk with bands and artists. I always talk about the music. I always talk about what makes it incredibly impactful. But being able to talk with some of these, younger labels, independent labels, developmental labels, we actually get to see where people who really want to see music thrive and are not just in it just to make a dollar or make, a whole bunch of money at times, are actually really trying to do things for these bands. Like you heard about what Peter was talking about with the importance of the relationship, because when things are going well, everyone's the best friend. When things aren't going well, though, there's a lot of animosity that's there. But if you build up that relationship and you put people first and you invest in them, then when things go sideways, people aren't pointing the finger at anybody. People aren't just playing the blame game. You take a step back and say, okay, that sucked. How do we fix this? How do we move forward from it? And that's exactly why Manic Kat is in a really good position right now, which is why they're going to have a lot of big things happening in 2024 and throughout 2025. Now, that band that Peter brought up, do I know who the band is? Yeah, he told me afterwards. Am I going to tell you, though? Nope. You want to know why? Because, come on, it's their thing. They deserve to have a huge announcement for it, and I'm not going to be the one to break it. So make sure you follow along with them. Make sure you know when that announcement comes. It should be coming at the end of September. So go to the podcast below where it says find Manic Kat Records online. Links levels for everything are going to be there for you. So you can follow along with them, get to know the bands that they have on, and know what exciting is coming up in the future. Also, be sure to subscribe to the Chord Progression Podcast. You can hit subscribe right down here on YouTube, hit follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit the like button as well to help push the episodes. You can go to the description of this podcast as well to find the links for YouTube's or Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Yes, because that's where you can follow us on social media with all the fun stuff we got going on there. Thank you, Peter, for being on the podcast. This was a blast, and we're going to do this again at some time. So on that note, that's going to be it for me, everybody. Thank you for watching, listening to the Chord Progression Podcast. My name is Kevin, and you guys know how I end every single one. That's a big, healthy, and hearty. See ya! Yeah.